All right, everybody, let's begin. Thanks for being here today. We've got a lot to cover in terms of course mechanics, and also we've got some important content for today, so it's good that you're here. As you've no doubt already heard, classes are going to be suspended next week. Now, rather than just fall behind on your attachment to the course and your understanding of the material, I figured I'd do kind of a middle ground between pressing forward in the course and doing nothing. And so it's not going to be new content that I deliver next week, but next week I am going to have some optional extra credit activities for you that reinforce some of the concepts that we've already had. What I'm going to be picking is the topics that I've noticed in the past students struggle with the most on the final exam. And so I'm going to be picking topics like external rate of return, for example. That's a complex procedure that if you don't do it for a while, it's easy to forget. And so I'm going to have a couple of activities that I'll email you in the morning. You'll have the day to work on it, and my hope is that it's the sort of thing that will take you between 30 minutes and 45 minutes. And so it's small, it's little bites. It's not an entire assignment, it's just a little activity. And if you do that activity, the size of the bonus it will give you, the 3 activities together would be about equal to a homework assignment. So that if you already have missed 3 homework assignments, for example, and I only dropped the lowest 2, remember, then this would be a way of balancing that out. Or even if, it's not going to have the effect of dropping the lowest, it's just the amount of points that I'll add will be equal to an additional homework grade. So look for those. I'll send them via email and you'll submit them by Blackboard. So I'll also put them on Blackboard, but you can get it by email or by Blackboard, and then you submit it online. So any questions about just specifically those extra credit activities? Yes?
Are they like multiple problems, or is it just like one bigger problem?
I haven't written it yet, so I'm not exactly sure. Question?
So they're, correct me if I'm wrong, but the mechanics are it's just points added to our grade rather than another grade added to our grade. So it's.
So the way I'll actually do it in the gradebook is I'll create an assignment that's worth 0 points, and you'll get 10 out of 0 for the first activity, 10 out of 0 for the second. And so then it will add those extra points that you've earned on top of the total that it's looking for over the course of the semester.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
Yep.
Wright.
Mm-hmm.
You said you'll send out an email the morning of, like, say Monday,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll just do the one for that Monday. And
That's
then
right.
Wednesday you'll send out.
That's right. Yeah, I don't want them to smear across multiple days. I want it to be like a bite-sized thing that you do that day. And it's optional. You don't have to do it. It's not going to hurt my feelings if you're busy with other stuff. But hopefully it'll be a little bit more structured than us just walking away from each other for 2 weeks. We're going to try and make the best of a difficult situation and just have these little reinforcing exercises.
Is it going to be available just during like our class time, or is it going to be like up until the end of that day?
You'll have more than the 50 minutes of this class time. So, we meet from 12 to 12:50, but I'll probably email it to you 8 or 9 a.m. and you should submit it 5 p.m., that sort of thing. You'll have over the course of the day. Okay, so that's those optional activities. Now, spring break is the 23rd to the 27th. I think we're all going to have much less interesting spring breaks than maybe we'd originally envisioned. I was supposed to go to Florida. I'm probably not going to do that now. Haven't decided, but most likely just be sitting around here. All right. In your previous schedule, you maybe noticed that homework 9 was supposed to be due earlier than Monday, March 30th. So I've put that in bold just to draw your attention to the fact that the submission deadline for the benefit cost assignment has been pushed back. We're going to have electronic classes from the 30th of March to the 10th of April. And since we're on the subject of the revised schedule, I handed out a paper copy of it to you already. Let's look at the electronic version. Can you pass this back to Samuel, please? All right, so here it's showing classes suspended. So we're going to have those optional learning activities next week. The week after is spring break. and then we will have 2 weeks of electronic courses, including the exam. Now that's something that I mentioned as a possibility. Remember, we kind of talked about this on Wednesday. We looked at Blackboard Collaborate. I mentioned maybe we'd have to have the exam remote, and that's what we're going to do. And so on Friday the 3rd of April, you'll get an email from me with the exam, and I'll mention it'll be the kind of exam that I think you could finish within 50 minutes, but you'll have 2 hours to take the exam. So that'll give you time to print it out if you're going to print it. You won't necessarily have to print it. If you don't have a printer available, you can just work the problems on a blank piece of paper and then take a picture of that and upload that for your exam. You'll also be signing a statement that says that you did it individually without the use of any unauthorized resources, and I'll have to take you at your word on that. So we will be doing the electronic exam. How many of you have class before this class, immediately before this class? Some of you have it immediately before this class. For those of you who have class immediately before this, do you also have one immediately after this? Just one. So you've got 3 in a row. So since I want to give you 2 hours for the exam, you and I will have to figure out another time that I can send you that test, like what your 2-hour block is going to be. So we'll work it out. There's going to be a handful of special cases, and we'll find solutions to those problems. Nobody should be stressed out. The semester isn't ruined because of what's happening. It's just going to be a little bit different. And maybe, we'll pick up some electronic communication skills and remote work skills that end up being valuable over the long term. There's still a lot of material that you're going to learn, but we do lose 1 week of content. So I've taken out taxes and depreciation from the course. And the Higher Education Policy Commission, which regulates universities in West Virginia, they've approved for the fact that our semester is going to be a week shorter than it ordinarily would. So they know you're not going to learn as much as you normally would. And I decided you'll probably have plenty of time through your life to learn about taxes the hard way. So we won't spend that time talking about it here in class. All right, so you see electronic now. Hopefully we'll be back in person and live on April 13th. Maybe not. And if not, we'll continue with Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. So just as a reminder where to find that, we're going to have lectures that are live. I'll be giving a live lecture, even though we won't be in the same room together. Where was it? Oh yeah. So our first live lecture will be on Monday the 30th of March. I don't know if I'll be in my office or maybe I'll be in my kitchen, but I'll be somewhere and you're going to be hearing a lecture. I'll also record it and I'll post it on YouTube, but it'll be interesting just to see what a train wreck it is if you want to join live, right? All right. Hopefully we'll iron out all the bugs. Okay, so the way that you'll find that is it's going to be, here is our course page, just the main home page here at the bottom, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. And there will be a room for each of the class meetings that we have. I created that test session for what we did on Wednesday. I'll create a session that says Monday, March 30th, and then that would be the room you go in on Monday, March 30th. All right? It's a lot. Any questions? It's going to be fine. Yeah.
How do office hours work?
Okay, great question. At the bottom of the schedule I've given you is contact details that you can use to get in touch with me. And so I've given you my email address, my phone number, and then 2 other new options. One option is Zoom, which is a video conferencing tool where this link is my personal link, and you and I can have a video chat using webcams and audio. I can share my screen with you. You can share your screen with me if it's an Excel-related question. If it's something you want to show me related to the project, you can screen share and show me some documents you've got pulled up. So Zoom is really powerful and flexible. we can have, with this free account that I created, meetings up to 40 minutes in length. And I don't think I've ever had a 40-minute office hours appointment with a student, so that should be plenty. So the way it'll work is, if you want to give me a call or send me an email, you can do that anytime. But then if you also want to do the Zoom thing, then just say in the email, hey, Dr. Waite, let's chat on Zoom. And then I'll know that we should both go into that Zoom room, and I'll see you there in the meeting. And then there's also Skype for Business. I'll have that on my laptop running continually, so if you have Skype for Business, I don't know if Skype and Skype for Business talk to each other. They may be separate, but I think through the Marshall suite of apps you've got access to, like through Microsoft, you can get Skype for Business if you don't already have it. And so we can also do like a video chat and screen sharing and stuff that way. So I'll be available during my office hours and then other hours as well if you want to set an appointment. Are there other questions? All right, so I have reduced the number of assignments for the semester. If you compare the before and after, you'll notice that there's fewer assignments now. Some of the dates changed and some of the things have stayed the same. For example, the project is still due on the 17th of April. But then the rest of these due dates have shifted with when we cover the material and what we cover. So I'll continue to make these announcements at the beginning of each class. It's not like you have to know everything that's happening for the whole semester right now, although you've got it in your hand. I'll continue to give you reminders as we go. Any other questions before we get into cost effectiveness analysis? All right. Has anybody noticed that here in Huntington they're starting to put video cameras at some of the intersections? Yeah? I'm worried that they're going to start doing tickets with that. Well, I guess it would be a mixed blessing because there's an epidemic of people running through red lights in Huntington. I'd love it if they did it for people who run red lights. What I don't want them to do is start using it for speeding. Because, you know.
I don't think it's legal for them to do it for speeding.
You're right. It's actually, yeah, the courts have decided that if they want to use it for speeding, an officer has to be standing there while it's happening for whatever reason. I guess somehow there's a loophole. I guess they're not exactly sure who's driving the car, and so they don't want to accuse you of a crime if they're not certain who it was that's in the vehicle. But what they're used for right now, for the most part, is just triggering the traffic lights. And, you know, keeping tabs on if there's been an accident at the intersection and the traffic flow. They sometimes can, based on how much traffic is going through an intersection, they can adjust the signal timing. So it's an interesting investment that a lot of cities are starting to make. But the question is, you know, here at this point in the course, what we're doing is we're considering those projects that don't generate a profit. We've moved on from rate of return analysis and present worth analysis, and what we're learning are some tools that you can use when the item in question doesn't necessarily turn a profit. And so that's why in the last two classes what we talked about was benefit cost analysis. And benefit cost analysis is where we're taking things and we're trying to monetize their effects, like how much is it worth in dollars for you to avoid an hour of delay? Or how much is it worth in dollars to have a reservoir available for someone to go fish? There are cases, though, where it's just really too difficult for us to monetize the benefits of something. And so what we need is tools that allow us to evaluate how effective things are without the need to monetize the advantages and disadvantages like we do in B2C analysis. And this idea of video cameras at intersections is an illustration of a comparison that maybe we would want to be able to do to other techniques, but it maybe would be tricky to monetize all of the possible benefits because there's so many benefits, and especially when it's related to law enforcement, trying to evaluate the value of a crime that's been averted a crime that otherwise would have occurred, it's difficult to turn that into dollars and cents. And so what is the benefit and how you compare alternatives of things that are dissimilar sometimes doesn't fit into B2C analysis. And so another tool that we have is called cost effectiveness analysis. Now, it's used for service sector projects rather than projects that are building a physical thing. That's the most common application for it. And so last time when we talked about benefit cost analysis, the in-class exercise you did was having to do with the construction of a reservoir that provided flood control benefits and fire protection benefits and recreation benefits. And so B2C analysis is most of the time used on physical things, whereas cost effectiveness analysis is used for intangibles. Intangibles means the benefit that's added to society by people doing work that doesn't result in a physical thing being built. And so a nurse is providing services, and it's valuable services, but it's not like a widget or a product is being built at the end of the nurse's shift. So healthcare, accounting, police, financial services, safety, these are all different service sector topics that don't generate a thing. So we use it for service sector, and we use it when benefits are difficult to quantify, the dollar value of things. And so we have to have some other measure of effectiveness other than the ratio of benefits to the ratio of costs. And so here's this alternative ratio that we use instead. The costs we do measure in how expensive it is to have a police officer, or the cost associated with delivering health care. The costs are easy to quantify, but instead of benefits, we just have some other measure of effectiveness that's unrelated to value in dollar terms. And so let's just use an illustration here as what if there's 4 different offices that are processing passport applications. And so for an office that's has employees and electricity and rent that they have to pay and health care, it's easy for us to add up all of the expenses with having an office open. And so the costs can be qualified in dollar terms. But instead of having the benefits, what we are measuring is the productivity of each office. And if the office exists to process passport applications, then the natural thing to do is to look at how many passport applications per month is each office able to generate. So if you compare Office C to Office A, you can sort of get a sense that Office C is expensive, but they also are generating the most. But the question is the extra expense for one office compared to another justified? Or if there's a budget limit, then which of these offices would you fund? If you have a total of $1,600 per hour of opening, which of the offices would you select? And so here's the procedure. What we do is we first of all calculate the cost relative to the effectiveness. And in this case, the effectiveness is applications per month. And so what I've measured here is I have the cost in dollars divided by the applications per month that are being generated. Now, the units are mixed, but that's okay. The time units are mixed because up in the numerator, it's dollars per hour, and in the denominator, it's applications per month. And so we've got units of hours in the numerator term and units of months in the denominator, but it's okay because all we're doing is we're comparing these to each other on a relative sense. And so what you can see is which office is the most efficient in terms of productivity per dollar spent. Which is the best one? Well, what you want is the lowest value, the lowest number here. So 0.051 means that they're spending the least per application that's being processed. And so B is the most efficient, and Office D is the least efficient. So what we do is we reorder those. And at the top of the list, we put our best office. And at the bottom of the list, we put our worst in terms of this C to E ratio. And then column 5, the cumulative cost per hour, is just looking at if you had that office for that row and all the other offices that are better that were operating, then what would be the cost of having that one and all the other ones that are better than it. And so you can see Office B, if you only have Office B operational, it costs you $450 per hour. But if you have Office A and Office B open, then it would be $13.25 per hour. So for a limit of $1,600 per hour, what you'd select is you'd select Office B and Office A, and then that would maximize the number of applications you can process. So what are some other possible combinations? What if we did Office B and D? Because that would be under the limit. If you did B and D, what I'm saying is the total number of applications you would have processed for B and D would be less than the number of applications if you have B and A. And so 8,900 plus 14,000 is more than 8,900 plus 6,000. So this ordering by cost effectiveness ratio is the way that we can sort and maximize our productivity. Any questions about this technique? Capital rationing is what we call it when there's a limit on the amount of funding that's available. And we do this analysis so that we can make sure that our funds are spent in the most efficient way. And the key to it is that after you calculate the ratio, you have the best at the top, worst at the bottom, and then you calculate this cumulative cost, which is, for example, 13,325 plus 1,100 is what gives you 2,425. And then 2,425 plus 650 is what gives you the cumulative cost in the cell below it. All right, so as you maybe would expect, we're going to have some practice with this cost effectiveness technique. If you would please start up Excel, you're going to be analyzing some organizations that are trying to protect wildlife and figure out if you have a $5 million limit, which of these organizations should be funded. Okay, so some of this you're going to do by hand. Some of it you can do with Excel. What we're looking at is what's the total cost per year for each organization, because what we have is the data in cost per person per year. So for example, Helping Hands has 23 employees. Each of those employees costs $26,000 a year. So the total cost will be the personnel times the cost per person. And then the cost effectiveness ratio takes the total cost of that organization into account, as well as the number of poachers that they are arresting each year. Okay, so here's what you should see in your first analysis. If you multiply the number of people in each organization by the cost per year, then that'll give you the total cost. So Helping Hands, for them to fund their organization, would be $598,000. If you want to bring EcoPlanet online, $1.5 million. And then the number of poachers that they arrested. And so the effectiveness ratio, what you want to have is as low as possible. because this is the number of dollars they're spending for every poacher that's arrested. So think of it this way. EcoPlanet isn't very good because they charge $1.5 million, but they only get 67 poachers. Whereas if you fund Helping Hands instead, then you'll get 85 poachers and you only spend about $600,000. So it's far more efficient to get these organizations with the low cost per poacher. All right, so the next step is then to reorder and have the best organization at the top, and then create this column of cumulative amounts spent. So you can see that I've got Habitat XP at the top, Gorilla Watch at the bottom, and just it's gradually sorted by increasing cost effectiveness ratio. And then the cumulative amount spent for that column is just related to, if I fund only Habitat XP, how much am I spending? If I'm spending, if I have Habitat XP and Helping Hands, what's the total cost? And so I can't pay for all of them. I've only got $4.5 million available. Is that it, the limit, or is it? 5 million, okay. So with 5 million I can have these three organizations, but I couldn't bring EcoPlanet into the fold because then that would put me over the budget.
I feel like I should go buy another tablet of engineering paper like if I run out of a looks like probably
Yeah, supply chains are going to be disrupted.
I mean, I've gotten so many emails from like Kroger and like Dunkin' and different like retail stores and stuff about like what's going on.
Yeah, everyone wants. So we can only afford to have the first three organizations, the top three, Habitat XP, Helping Hands, Save the Forest. The cumulative budget there is $4.5 million, which is below the 5 million limit. But if we tried to fund EcoPlanet as well, we wouldn't be able to because they require another 1.5 million and we haven't got it. So total poachers we can get are going to be the number that each of those three individuals can arrest, so 495.